John Parker's life in Crown Point, Indiana, initially seemed ideal. Married to Judy with children, he appeared to be living the American dream. John and Judy ran a highly successful business selling Kirby vacuums, and they enjoyed the fruits of their hard work. However, this seemingly perfect life took a tragic turn on April 17, 2003, when Judy called 911. She reported that John had been shot outside their car. Judy described hearing 2 gunshots and saw a mysterious figure dressed in black running away from the scene, but little else could be immediately confirmed. This event would eventually unravel the dark truth behind the Parker family's relationships and their eventual downfall. John Parker was born in 1970 and grew up in Indiana. His early life is not extensively documented, but it is known that he came from a middle-class family and had at least one sibling. As a young man, he was driven by an entrepreneurial spirit, always seeking ways to achieve independence and success. John was never one to sit idly. From the moment he graduated high school, he was eager to earn money and make a name for himself. His first job was as a waiter's assistant in a restaurant, but he quickly became frustrated and left, although the reasons for his departure remain unclear. Nonetheless, John's desire to succeed was undeterred. He soon found work that gave him greater autonomy: sales. John became a door-to-door salesman for Kirby vacuums, a role that would shape his future. Initially, his family mocked him for his choice, but John's perseverance and drive paid off. By the end of his first year, he was the company's top salesman in his area, and he made it clear that he wasn't content with just that. John worked long hours, sometimes up to 16 hours a day, and quickly earned the respect of his peers, becoming not only a top salesman, but also a mentor to others. His hard work and leadership made him a role model for new salespeople. During this time, he met Judy, a young, ambitious woman who was born in October 1969 in Texas. Judy came from a modest background, being one of 3 children in a low-income family. Despite her youth, she was assertive and determined. At just 14, she had married and later divorced, having 2 children, Christina and Daniel Hicks. John, who was initially not looking for more salespeople, was impressed by Judy's confidence and decided to give her a chance. Over time, Judy not only became a successful salesperson under John's mentorship, but also won his heart. They eventually entered a romantic relationship, which would change the course of both their lives. John's career took off as he continued his work with Kirby vacuums. He proved himself as an outstanding salesman and trainer, gaining a reputation for being a hard worker who could achieve success through dedication. By the end of his first year, John had risen to the top of the company's ranks in his area, and his success story was becoming well known. In fact, he soon found that his true passion lay in training others to be successful in sales, and he quickly became a mentor for many new recruits. It was during this time that John met Judy, and their professional relationship soon turned into a romantic one. As they grew closer, John and Judy decided to start their own Kirby vacuum business in Michigan. Together, they built a successful company, offering sales and services, as well as training sessions for aspiring salespeople. By 1992, with their professional lives flourishing, John and Judy married. Over the years, their business grew, and they were able to afford a comfortable life. They had 2 daughters, Tiffany and Erica, and moved into several upscale homes, enjoying a life of luxury. Their children attended excellent schools, and they frequently took vacations, all while John amassed significant wealth. Despite their success, John often used his wealth to inspire the younger salespeople he trained, showing them what could be achieved through hard work and determination. John's relationship with Judy flourished, and they became a power couple, admired by those around them. John was recognized as one of the best salespeople and trainers in the business, and Judy played a key role in his success, supporting him both personally and professionally. Their business thrived, and they became known as a successful entrepreneurial duo. They had 2 daughters, Tiffany and Erica, bringing the total number of children in the family to 4, including Judy's children from her previous marriage, Christina and Daniel. Despite the luxury they enjoyed, life was not always perfect. Judy's children, Christina and Daniel, were showing troubling signs of behavior. Christina especially struggled with making poor choices in friends, often associating with troublemakers and engaging in drinking and allegedly drug use. Daniel, on the other hand, was hyperactive, mischievous, and frequently getting into trouble. On one occasion, he took John's car without permission and drove around the neighborhood, destroying mailbox posts. The next day, John went from house to house, paying for the damages to prevent the neighbors from reporting Daniel to the police. These incidents began to cause tension in the family, and John's frustration with his stepchildren grew. Judy's children's behavior continued to worsen as they entered their teenage years, and this added stress to John and Judy's marriage. At one point, John was even called to the school to address complaints about Daniel's behavior. During this incident, John allegedly became so frustrated that he hit Daniel, which further strained their relationship. Despite their success in business, these personal struggles began to cast a shadow over their home life. As time went on, the issues with Judy's children worsened. Christina, now a teenager, continued to make poor choices in friends, hanging out with those who had a bad influence and allegedly engaging in drinking and drug use. Daniel, at 13, was not far behind, exhibiting angry and reckless behavior. On one occasion, Daniel took John's car and drove around, destroying mailbox posts in the neighborhood. The next day, John visited the homes of the people whose property had been damaged and paid for the repairs to prevent them from calling the police. John's frustrations with his stepchildren grew, especially after he was called to Daniel's school to address complaints about the boy's behavior. During this incident, John allegedly hit Daniel, which created further tension in the family. Despite these challenges, John and Judy continued to work hard, and their business continued to grow. However, the problems within their household started to have a lasting impact on their relationship. John and Judy's marriage began to deteriorate as time went on. Judy took a trip to Texas to visit her family, and during the trip, she confided in her brother that her marriage was falling apart. She complained about John's treatment of her children and his increasingly erratic behavior. This trip seemed to act as a catalyst for a breakdown in their relationship. At this point, Judy began to side with her children, especially Christina and Daniel, who had been involved in troubling behaviors. This decision created even more tension in an already strained relationship. Meanwhile, John began to suspect that Judy was being unfaithful to him with an employee of his company, a man named Jeff. John, never one to leave things to chance, took matters into his own hands. He installed cameras in the office and eventually caught Judy in the act of infidelity, confirming his suspicions. This revelation was devastating for John, and it caused him to spiral emotionally. He began drinking heavily, and his behavior became increasingly volatile. He would have explosive arguments with Judy, and his temper would flare, often leading to violent outbursts. At one point, John even beat his daughter Tiffany with a belt after she was reported by her teacher for not completing her homework. The physical abuse was reported by Tiffany's teacher, who noticed marks from the beating and called social services. John quickly warned his children not to speak about the incident, telling them that if they wanted to continue living the life they had, they needed to keep quiet about what had happened. Tiffany initially blamed her stepbrother Daniel for the incident, and Daniel didn't deny it. However, the family's dysfunction continued to grow as their personal issues spilled over into their business and their social lives. In an attempt to salvage their marriage, John and Judy decided to move the family to Crown Point, Indiana, in the hopes that a change of scenery would help. John, still in love with Judy and desperate to fix their relationship, believed that removing her from temptation might give them a fresh start. However, the move did little to improve their situation. While Judy began to focus on her appearance, losing weight and changing her look, John's mental state deteriorated. He grew a beard, started smoking, and let his wardrobe decline to simple jeans. He became distracted and disengaged from his work and family. One of the first people to come under scrutiny was her son Daniel. 6 months prior to John's murder, there had been a troubling incident where gang members had reported that Daniel had paid them to kill his stepfather. The plan, however, had been aborted, and the gang members had kept the money without following through. The police had previously dismissed this as an unlikely story, but after John's murder, they revisited Daniel's potential involvement. During questioning, Daniel admitted to trying to arrange for someone to harm his stepfather, but he claimed that he only wanted to injure John, not kill him. Despite Daniel's confession, he was released due to a solid alibi and a lack of concrete evidence tying him to the murder. But investigators didn't stop there. They turned their focus to Judy's relationship with her children and began to question whether she had played a larger role in influencing them. Judy's previous attempts to poison John were also discovered during the investigation, showing a pattern of violence and manipulation. Meanwhile, the investigators kept looking for any new leads. They found that prior to his murder, John had 2 life insurance policies worth a total of $1 million, which would provide a financial motive for Judy. It was discovered that Judy had been trying to claim the insurance money soon after her husband's death, although the insurance company initially refused the payout, citing the ongoing investigation. This only fueled suspicions that Judy's motive for the murder was financial gain. Judy's role in the crime gradually became clearer when it was revealed that she had been using the money from her husband's business to fund the murder plot. She had forged company checks and stolen $7,500 to hire hitmen to kill John. But when the hitmen took the money without completing the job, Judy allegedly instructed them to buy a weapon for her son Daniel to use instead. The story continued to unfold when the police discovered more information from Christina, who had once been a part of the conspiracy to kill John. Under questioning, Christina admitted to purchasing the firearm used in the murder and to calling her parents to ask them to stop by the office that night, under the pretext of picking up a forgotten homework notebook. Daniel, now located in Arizona, was confronted with the new evidence, including the ballistics matching the weapon found on family property to the bullets used in John's murder. Faced with this evidence, Daniel confessed to being the one who shot John, but he also pointed the finger at his mother, Judy, claiming that she had orchestrated the whole plan. Daniel explained that his mother had been manipulating him and his sister into believing that John was abusive and that they needed to kill him to improve their lives. Judy had convinced them that the murder would lead to a better, wealthier life with more freedom. Daniel also revealed that his mother had planned the murder for nearly a year and even provided him with black clothing, gloves, and a mask to wear on the night of the crime. Daniel confessed that he shot John in the head and that the second shot was an accidental discharge while he rifled through John's pockets looking for his wallet. He explained that his mother had instructed him to take the wallet, and he later returned home without alerting his younger sisters, a task made easier by Christina, who kept them occupied with television. As the investigation progressed, it became clear that Judy had been the mastermind behind the murder, using her children to carry out the crime. Judy had also been trying to cover up her actions, disposing of the weapon, the clothing worn during the murder, and John's wallet. The authorities soon learned that this wasn't Judy's first attempt to kill her husband. She had tried to poison his food earlier, but John had survived the poisoning, though he was briefly hospitalized under the guise of food poisoning. By the end of 2007, Daniel was formally charged with conspiracy to murder his stepfather. He entered a plea deal, agreeing to testify against his mother in exchange for a reduced sentence. In March 2008, Daniel, now 20 years old, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to murder and was sentenced to 20 to 25 years in prison. His testimony provided a detailed account of how his mother had orchestrated the crime and manipulated him and Christina into participating. Judy, realizing that her involvement had been exposed, eventually surrendered to the authorities in 2009. She agreed to plead guilty to conspiracy to commit murder and acknowledged her role in planning and executing the murder of her husband. The prosecution requested that she be sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum of 28 years and a maximum of 35 years. Judy was sentenced to 33 years in prison in late August 2009. In October 2009, Christina, who had initially denied any involvement in the crime, pleaded guilty to aiding a criminal and was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Daniel was released in 2017 after participating in a community transition court program, while Christina tragically died of a drug overdose shortly after her release in 2013. The Parker case was a tragic tale of greed, manipulation, and betrayal. It not only destroyed John Parker's life, but also had devastating consequences for his family. Judy's desire for money and a better life led her down a path of crime, ultimately ruining the lives of her children and destroying the legacy of a successful entrepreneur. This case highlights the destructive power of greed and the lengths some people will go to in order to achieve their desires. As the years passed, the legacy of the Parker case remained a haunting reminder of the devastating consequences of greed, manipulation, and the destruction of familial bonds. The story continued to unfold even after the criminal trials had concluded, as the surviving family members tried to cope with the aftermath. For Daniel, his time in prison was a period of intense reflection. As he served his sentence, he grappled with the realization of how deeply he had been manipulated by his mother. Despite the pain of his actions, Daniel's remorse was evident. He had been promised a better life through his mother's twisted version of reality. But the reality of the crime was far from what he had imagined. The trauma of being coerced into participating in the murder of his stepfather haunted him, and he struggled to find a sense of redemption. Daniel's participation in a community transition program in prison offered him a chance to rebuild his life, but the weight of the crime would never fully leave him. His release in 2017 was bittersweet, as he tried to reconcile with the devastation he had caused. Christina, on the other hand, faced a much shorter life following her involvement in the crime. After pleading guilty to aiding a criminal, she served a brief sentence before being released. However, the scars of the case ran deep for her as well. Her sense of guilt and shame over her participation in the murder lingered for years, and she struggled with addiction issues in the years following her release. Tragically, Christina's life was cut short when she died of a drug overdose in 2013, just a few years after her release from prison. Her death was a tragic reminder of the toll the crime had taken on her, both physically and emotionally. Judy, whose actions had led to the tragic deaths of relationships and ultimately her husband, served her lengthy sentence in prison. Her life behind bars was one of solitude and regret, though she often tried to justify her actions as a result of feeling trapped and desperate. Yet despite her eventual admission of guilt, Judy's motivations remained hard to fully understand. For her, the pursuit of wealth and a better life had become an obsession that clouded her judgment and led to her betrayal of not only her husband, but also her children. The Parker family's once promising future was forever shattered. The children had been raised in an environment where manipulation and greed were ingrained, and the crime had altered the course of their lives irrevocably. Judy's financial ambitions, her toxic influence over her children, and her manipulation of them into committing the crime ultimately destroyed the family. John Parker, a successful businessman, had been a victim of his wife's insatiable greed, which led to a tragic and violent end. His death at the hands of those he trusted the most left a deep void in the community and shattered the Parker family. The case served as a stark reminder of how unchecked ambition and manipulation can warp people's lives and lead to disastrous consequences. In the years following the conclusion of the case, the town where the Parkers had once been a well-respected family saw the lasting repercussions of the crime. The public's perception of the Parker family had been irrevocably damaged, and the story of John's murder became one of cautionary tales. It was often cited as an example of how financial desperation, family dysfunction, and a disregard for human life could result in tragedy. Ultimately, the Parker family's story was not just about the crime itself, but also about the profound impact of their choices on the people around them. It illustrated how lives can be permanently altered by decisions made in moments of weakness, greed, and desperation. The Parker case left behind a legacy of pain and loss, a reminder of how easily lives can be derailed by the pursuit of material wealth and the betrayal of those we love the most.